You probably grew up hearing the story of a lone rider, a masked man riding a white horse, firing silver bullets and bringing justice to the Old West. It's a beautiful image, isn't it? Clean, heroic. But the truth? The truth is uglier than Hollywood wants you to believe. And in this case, it's far more shocking. While Western films filled screens with square-jawed, fair-skinned heroes, real history buried the name of a man who apprehended over 3,000 criminals, was never wounded in combat, and lived the life that inspired legends, but without the glint of silver. He was a former slave who fled to Indian territory, learned to survive in the chaos, and became the most feared nightmare of any outlaw in the Oklahoma Territory. His name was Bass Reeves, and today we're going to dust off that tarnished star and show why the system tried to erase the most ruthless sheriff to ever walk the dirt of the West. Sit down, pour yourself a drink, because Bass Reeves's justice was anything but romantic. It was as cold as the steel of a Colt 45. Close your eyes for a second. Try to smell it. It's not the lavender scent of San Francisco saloons. It's the smell of tanned horse sweat, old leather, and the metallic odor of dried blood under the 40-degree sun. We are in the indigenous territory in 1875, a place the law forgot and where God rarely stopped by for a visit. It was 75,000 square miles of dense thickets, red canyons, and treacherous rivers. If you were a murderer, a cattle thief, or a rapist, this was your paradise. There were no fences, only vastness. The ground in the cities was a mixture of mud and sawdust, and the sound that dominated the nights was not music, but the creaking of the hinges of the makeshift cells. The only place where justice tried to breathe was in Fort Smith, where the Judge Isaac Parker, the hanging judge, handed out death sentences like someone handing out pamphlets. But Parker had a problem. He had the gallows, but no one to bring the souls to the noose. He needed men who weren't afraid to die, men who knew that labyrinth of red earth better than the outlaws themselves. It was there, in that purgatory of dust and gunpowder, that a giant, broad-shouldered black man appeared, mounted on a gray horse. The brilliance of Bass Reeves's star began to rust even before it was polished, because he knew, in that territory, the law was just a word. Reality was the reach of his rifle. They said Bass Reeves was invisible to bullets. In 32 years of service, he was in shootouts that would make the OK Corral massacre look like a schoolyard fight. He had his hat pierced by projectiles, his ammunition belt ripped from his waist by a gunshot, and his horse's reins cut by a rifle bullet, but the metal never touched his skin. The irony of fate is cruel to those who underestimate a man like him. Reeves wasn't just a sharpshooter who could hit a target hundreds of feet away with his Winchester. He was a master of psychology and disguise. Hollywood loves the hero who barges into a saloon and kicks ass, but the truth is uglier and far more intelligent. Bass dressed as a beggar, an outlaw, even a rancher searching for lost cattle. He would get close, gain their trust, and before the bandit knew it, the cold barrel of his coat was pressed against their neck. He carried 2 revolvers, used with the grips facing forward, the famous cross draw. And they say he was so fast that death didn't have time to blink. But make no mistake, he wasn't a butcher. Bass had unwavering ethics. He said, "The law is the law," and he carried out every warrant with mathematical precision. He brought over 3,000 men alive to Fort Smith. Those who didn't come alive, well, they chose the harder path under the Oklahoma sun. If you were on the run in the Wild West and knew Bass Reeves was on your trail, would you surrender or try your luck against the best marksman in the territory? Let us know in the comments if you think courage has its limits. But do you know what the problem is with being a man of principle in a world without scruples? Eventually, the law you uphold will demand a price
no one should have to pay. Bass Reeves believed that no one was above justice, not even his own blood. They said Bass Reeves was incorruptible, but fate, with its cruel irony, decided to test that purity in the most brutal way possible. In 1902, an arrest warrant for murder landed on the Marshal's desk in Muskogee. The crime? A man had killed his own wife in a fit of jealousy and rage. The name on the warrant? Benjamin Benny Reeves, Bass's son. The field marshal who handed over the paper was visibly shaken. He offered the job to any other man in the force. No one expected a father to hunt down his own son. But Bass, with that face that seemed sculpted from granite, reached out and took the paper. His hands didn't tremble, but those who were there said his eyes seemed to have aged 10 years in 10 seconds. He didn't ask for help. He mounted his horse and rode alone. Imagine the silence of that journey, the paranoia of a father who knows every trick of an outlaw, knowing that he was the one who taught his son to shoot and to hide.
2 weeks later, Bass crossed the city limits. He was bringing Benny into custody. There was no special treatment, no facilitated escape under cover of night. He offered his own blood to a system that ironically still viewed black men as second-class citizens. Bass proved that the law was absolute, but at what cost? The brilliance of that star on his chest was never the same again. The man who had never been wounded by a bullet now carried a hole in his chest that no doctor could close. You might think that after such loyalty, the government would take care of Bass. But in the Old West, gratitude dies quickly when politics changes sides. The old lion was about to discover that the world he helped civilize no longer had a place for him. Time is the only outlaw that no one can catch. In 1907, the dust began to settle in a different way. Oklahoma ceased to be a territory and became a state, and with civilization came a shadow that Bass Reeves knew well but hoped to have left behind: the Jim Crow laws. The irony of fate is cruel. The man who paved the way for order was discarded by the very order he helped build. Because he was a black man, Bass could not continue as a federal marshal in the new state system. At 68, with the heavy burden of upholding justice for an entire country on his shoulders, he was forced to accept a position as a municipal police officer in Muskogee. Imagine the giant, the man who made entire gangs surrender just by hearing his name, now walking along paved sidewalks, settling drunken brawls and dealing with minor offenses. He still wore his star, but its shine was faded. He walked with a cane, but still carried his revolvers.
They said that, even in his old age, no gang of thugs dared cross his path. The paranoia was no longer about being shot in the back in the middle of the desert, but about seeing the world he had shaped become a place where he was no longer welcome because of the color of his skin. The hero was being erased while still alive. In 1910, the great engine stopped. Bass Reeves didn't die in a duel at sunset, and no silver bullet brought him down. It was Bright's disease, a kidney failure, that finally disarmed him. He died in a bed in Muskogee. At his funeral, hundreds of people showed up, white, black, and Native American, men he had captured and men he had protected. Everyone knew they were burying the last true titan of the frontier. But as the coffin was lowered, the Hollywood myth-making machine began to rev its engines, and the name of Bass Reeves was about to be thrown into the common grave of historical oblivion to make way for more acceptable versions of the West. But do you think a story like that simply disappears? What I'm about to tell you is the secret that Hollywood kept under lock and key while making millions off a masked hero. The truth is uglier than Hollywood wants you to believe, but it's also far more fascinating. For decades, children have played at being the Lone Ranger, the masked hero who rode a white horse and had a loyal Native American companion. But look closely at the details. Bass Reeves rode a light gray, almost white horse. He frequently wore disguises, social masks, so to speak, to catch criminals. Did he hand out silver coins as his signature? No, but he was known for his pure silver integrity.
And the most striking detail, Bass Reeves spent a large part of his life in Indian Territory, and many of his prisoners were brought in with the help of native scouts who were his close friends. Many historians believe that Bass Reeves was the real-life inspiration for the Lone Ranger. But in the 1930s, when the legend went to radio and then to TV, the segregated United States wasn't ready for a black hero. So they whitewashed the story, put on a cloth mask, and hid the face of the man who actually lived the myth. The irony of fate is cruel. The man who inspired the greatest legend of justice in the West was erased from popular culture by the very society he swore to protect. And if you think 3,000 arrests is an exaggeration, listen to this. Bass Reeves was illiterate. He never learned to read or write. He would have someone read the warrants to him and memorize every name, every detail, and every crime. He never brought in the wrong man. He was also a man of deep, quiet religiosity. It was said that after a shootout, he could be seen cleaning his weapons with an eerie calm while murmuring prayers for the men he had just sent to the other side. He took no pleasure in death. He merely served a master more rigorous than Judge Parker, his own conscience. Ultimately, Bass Reeves's story isn't about guns or fast horses. It's about the resilience of a man who refused to be defined by the chains that once bound him. He escaped slavery to become a right-hand man of the law. He stood up to his own son to keep his word. The lesson left in the ashes of Oklahoma is that true courage is not the absence of fear, nor the pursuit of glory, because glory abandoned him in the end.
True courage is doing what is right when no one is watching and when the world seems to be against you. Bass Reeves died as a simple police officer, but lived as a giant. The brilliance of his star may have faded, but the steel beneath it never broke. And you? Do you think you could put the law above your own family like Bass did? Or does justice have a limit when blood is thicker than water? Comment below. If this story took you out of your comfort zone, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because here we don't tell Hollywood legends, we tell the truth they tried to bury. In the next video, we'll talk about another type of justice, Judge Isaac Parker, the man who sent 79 men to the gallows without hesitation. Was the hanging judge a monster or a necessary evil? You won't want to miss this. Until next time, following the trail of history.